everyone, this is Heather. Thanks so much for joining me. Today I've got a tag tutorial and we're going to be making this fun little gnome tag for Father's Day. Over on the Lawn Fanatics blog, the current challenge is anything but a card. So I got out some of my Lawn Fawn stamps and thought I would make this fun little tag perfect to put on a Father's Day gift. I'm using two of their stamp sets. The first is Gnome Sweet Gnome. I'm using the gnome, the two little birds, and the mushroom. I'm also using the Totally Awesome set. I'm using the little frog, the dragonfly, and the Happy Father's Day sentiment. Also from Lawn Fawn, I'm using the large wood grain background die. I've got a small stitched rectangle die from Stampin' Up! And I've also got an oval and a scallop die. I have had these for so long, I'm not sure. I think they might be spellbinders. I'm not 100% sure. The tallest scallop is about 4 inches tall. Using the scalloped oval, I've cut out a piece of Gotta Have Gingham, and this is sort of the minty blue-green color, and I've also cut out a piece of light tan craft cardstock. The smaller oval is about 3.5 inches tall, and I'm going to center it on the center of the gingham piece and tape that in place and run that through my die cutting machine to make my frame. And I'm going to place the other scalloped oval on top of the wood grain background and run that through my die cut machine as well. Here are those pieces after they've come out of the die cutting machine. With black memento ink, I'm going to be stamping the Happy Father's Day sentiment on another piece of this tan paper. I'm going to line up this stitched rectangle die over top and place a little piece of repositionable tape on there and run that through my die cutting machine. I wanted to add a little extra color to these tan pieces, so I've got some Distress Oxide brushed corduroy ink and a small blending brush. I've placed my cardstock on some scrap paper, and I'm just gonna softly add some color around the edges of these pieces. I just want to make sure that the color goes in far enough that you'll be able to see it with the frame on top. So after inking the large piece, I'm going to pick up the smaller one, just go around the edges lightly with the brush to add a little bit of color around the edge. Now that these are inked, I'm going to set them aside for a second. And because I had several images, I went ahead with my black memento ink and used my stamp positioning tool and stamped my images on 110-pound weight white cardstock. If you've watched my channel at all, you know how much I love the Tri-Blend Spectrum Noir markers. These are markers that have 3 shades of the same color in one marker. I absolutely love them. They make blending and coloring so quick and easy. In addition to the large box of 24, they have several other sets that have 6 additional colors in them. I really loved this Vintage Blends because it has lots of subtle kind of muted vintage tones in it that I thought were really pretty and really went along with a lot of the coloring that I like to do. So I'm going to be using all of the colors except for the purple from this set today. Just to give you an idea of how they look on cardstock, I did a little swatch of each one. Starting off with the little gnome's hat, instead of doing a bright red, I'm using the Antique Pink blend. I've completely colored it in lightest shade. I'm going to add some shading and shadowing with the darker tone. And I thought, this being a more masculine project, that it would be better to use, like I said, the vintage muted tones rather than bright primary colors. With that darkest shade laid down, I'm going into the mid-tone. I'm going to kind of overcolor between those two colors and then go back to the lightest shade and blend everything in together. I also like sometimes to go in and add just a little bit more of the darker tone just to enhance that shadow. Another one of the shades in this vintage set is Vintage Blue, and I've used the lightest shade to completely color in his jacket. I'm going to use the darker tone to go in and add some shading and shadowing, kind of pretending that my light source is the upper right hand corner, so I'm going to have it be darker on the lower left side. I'm going to add a little bit of the medium toned and back to the lighter to blend it all in together. I'm using the same Vintage Blue blend for the jacket on the little birds as well. I've colored them in with the lighter shade, adding some shading and shadowing with the darker tone, overcolor a little bit with the mid-tone, and blend in with the light. And the last thing that I've colored with this blue is the top of the mushroom, avoiding the polka dots. This vintage set has two really nice brown colors in it. For his pants, I'm going to be using muted brown. I've filled it in with a lighter shade. And now I'm going to add some shading and shadowing with the darker tone. When I'm coloring really small areas like this, sometimes I will only use the light and the dark tone. It just makes it a little bit easier to color. The other brown in this set is red brown. I'm going to be doing his belt and his shoes. I've laid down the lightest shade. I'm add just a little bit of shading and shadowing with the darker shade. I didn't want to leave his beard a stark white, so I'm using gray brown blend. This is from the set of 24. This is not in the vintage set. I'm just going to go around kind of the edges of his beard and mustache and add just a little bit of gray to give it some more dimension. And I've used the same color on the belt buckle. For his skin tone, I'm using the Fair Skin blend. This is also just in the regular set of Spectra Noir markers. I'm also going to be doing the belly of the frog and the base and the polka dots of the mushroom. Moving on to the darker shade of the Fair Skin blend, I'm going to add my shading and shadowing. Give him like a little red tip on his nose. And add a little bit of shading on the frog and the mushroom as well. The last color that I'm using from the Vintage Markers set is this yellow-green blend. I've colored in the body of the frog as well as the wings of the dragonfly. I'm going to add a little bit of the darker tone towards the center of the body of the dragonfly. Add some shading and shadowing on my little frog. Use the mid-tone on just the frog, and back to the lighter shade to blend that all in together. Here's all my finished images colored. There are die sets for each of these stamp sets, but I don't have them, so I'm just going to take my scissors and cut all my images out, leaving just a little bit of a white border around the edges. With my images cut out, I'm ready to assemble my tags. On the back of the scallop piece, I've placed really small foam squares. I'm going to flip the wood grain over and line up those scallops and press down. And that makes my little frame. I've placed tape runner on the back of the gnome, and I'm going to slip him inside where just a little bit of him is behind the frame. I'm going to do the same to the little frog. On the back of the sentiment, I've put a small foam square in the center. I'm going to put a little bit of tape runner on each edge. And I'm going to place that across the top of my tag. All my other little images have foam tape. I'm going to place them around the outside of the frame. Put the little mushroom down there. The little standing bird over here. This little bird is kind of sitting on top of the sentiment. And then the little dragonfly towards the center. I flipped my tag over, and I have a piece of jute twine that's about 6 inches long. I'm going to bring the ends together, and I've got some blue patterned washi tape. I'm going to tape that twine to the back of my tag. And here's the finished tag. I think this is going to be really cute to put on the present for my dad for Father's Day. Gnomes are really trendy right now, and I think these soft muted vintage colors work really well for a more masculine look. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial today. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Be sure to check out my channel and subscribe, and I hope you have a really happy day. Bye.